everyone, and welcome to SUTD Learning Celebration Carnival 2021. My name is Neha, and I'm the host for LCC 2021. It is my pleasure to welcome you here this afternoon. I would like to thank all of you for joining us here today for this very special occasion. Learning Celebration Carnival, LCC in short, is SUTD's annual event, where our students share their experiential learning journeys around the world and showcase their experiences from various programs held over the past year. This year, our theme is a continuation of 2021's orientation, Mujitsu, and our tagline is Analects of Wisdom. This year, we want to showcase how our seniors overcame their difficulties during their various experiences and share their journey with us, especially during these unprecedented times of pandemic. At this time, we are pleased to invite SUTD President, Professor Chong Chong, to give his opening address. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Chong.
Hi, thank you, Neha, for your introduction. Hi, everyone. Very good afternoon to all of you. As Neha just mentioned, this is our annual event, and we actually call this Learning Celebration Carnival. So there are three very important words here. One is about learning, to share your experience. And also we believe that this is, a day that you all should celebrate what you have learned and what you have achieved. And Carnival is that we want you to have fun. The fun is important here. SUTD wants you to, enjoy what you do. And when we started LCC, it was initially organized by the university undergraduate study, but now I understand that since a year or 2 years ago, it will be student-led event. So I'm very happy to see that. As you just heard, LCC provides this very unique platform for you to celebrate and share what you learned outside of the classroom. So I want to emphasize outside classroom. So internship, even your Europe, I think we used to have overseas experience, but because of COVID, I don't think we have such activities for last year. And of course, your fifth row and so on. And I think when you share, that there's another objective is to ensure that when people and even your junior listen to you, they get inspired lah. So I would say that this is also a day for inspiration here. Now, again, because we are now in this pandemic constraint, so this year LCC, again, we will take the hybrid form to adapt to this new normal. So I want to thank Ruth and also the student organizer. Just I talked to Jin Yi, there are a group of them. I think I really thank you thank you all for putting your effort to make this event very successful. Now, of course, not to forget, I want to also give special thanks to our keynote speakers, architect Tan Xiao Yan from CPG, and also later on, Miss Yvonne Tan from Dyson Singapore. And thank you for taking time. I know you are very busy. You have a busy schedule and deliver this speech to our students. I'm quite sure they'll benefit greatly from your wisdom and your insight. So again, I think despite the difficult situation, I commend all of you. We know constraint is there, but we are not so-called give up on what we want to do. I think we were able to adapt and also make changes to suit the situation. I'm happy that all of you have been able to go for this kind of activity outside the classroom. And I was told that the number of program participated is the same like even last year, despite this constraint. So with this, I will not spend too much time. Again, congratulations to every one of you for what you have achieved and what you're going to share. Thank you very much. Yeah. And stay safe, stay healthy. Yeah. Thank you. Hi, Nita, back to you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Chong, for giving that beautiful opening address. Next, we are pleased to invite Professor Pei King Leung, Associate Provost, Office of Undergrad Studies and SUTD Academy, to share a few words about the background and importance of the LCC.
Thank you, Neha. So, am I able to share my screen?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not allowed to. Can I have the host or privilege?
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, thank you everyone. Good afternoon again to student colleagues, especially the two keynote speakers, Xiaoyan and Yvonne, for joining this event. Like Dao Chong said, this LCC started in 2013. In fact, this year is the number 9 run or 8 run that we have. And basically it's a student-driven event. And pretty much we want our students to be able to, sorry, something wrong with my close on. So I have some problem with the sharing. Just give me a minute again. Okay. Oh, okay. So like what Dao Chong said, Prof Chong said, this LCC started since our inception. In fact, we started with a very humble beginning. You can see the first LCC was 2013. And with the support from all the students and even colleagues from MIT and Zhejiang, we were able to launch the LCC very successfully in 2013. And it was a very eventful occasion for students who have gained experience through our global leadership program, Asian leadership program at MIT and Zhejiang respectively. And then I think we already started internship. We also have very active fifth row activity, and some students actually did the Europe. So as a result, we learned from the humble beginning, and we started to scale up. When we moved to Dover, from Dover to Changi campus, we are able to attract consistently before pandemic about more than 1,000 participants. And I'm glad to say that, like what Prof Chong mentioned, is an occasion that you should celebrate in a very fun way. And before pandemic, when we can get together physically, we cater a lot of food, especially ice cream. We know that this is a very favorite item for students to let people really enjoy while they're talking to each other. And more importantly, I think this sharing experience hopefully will inspire our new freshmen or freshman students who just joined us about what are the activities they can look forward to beyond the physical lesson in the classroom. And this is very important because at the end of the day, I think it's the learning journey that coupled with the outside classroom activity make your study at SUTD very holistic. So I hope that today with the new what I call format here, despite that we are constrained by the physical presence, is a time for students to be able to reflect what you've done for the past 1 year. And perhaps some of this online learning, online what I call discussion, online mentorship by overseas or local partner will give you a new form experience that are making you more ready for the industry. And I want to highlight that now there is a signature program called UPOP, Undergraduate Practice Opportunity Program. This is one of the key programs we transfer from MIT to SUTD. And we maintain actually certain very unique characteristic of UPOP. It's a 5-stage, I would say, program. Students in the term 1 will start to experience certain workshop so that they can self-discover themselves or even do some initial career planning, what they would like to pursue. And then there's a chance for them to group together in the first IAP, January 2022 for current batch of students, where you can start to thinking about how to collaborate with each other, as well as to learn more about the latest practice from the industry. For instance, Xiaoyan and Yvonne will share you their own respective maybe industry and how this thing could be so forward-looking that now fit into your career exploration. And more importantly, after this UPOP week in Jan, typically, students will start to look for internship for those who really want to pursue internship. And there's a time where you start to form networking with a company through the career office, or even actually explore other opportunities to do overseas exchange or exposure in the summer. And for those who really go for internship, you embark on internship. If not, this will be a summer program that you can pursue. And the final stage, number 5, is where we are right now, is a reflection. But reflection is a very formal and very dry and boring term. So we turn it to be an LCC. So this is a time where you not only celebrate, you enjoy and you inspire others. So to be exact, LCC is actually the final stage of the UPOP, which is a reflection. And a reflection, I think, is something that we always believe that it should be bottom up rather than top down. And we hope that you will enjoy it today by learning from others, especially those who have exploration to learn new knowledge outside what you have experienced. And especially for those freshman students, you may want to know more about, for instance, certain program of your interest. You can use this platform to even actually ask questions, to the presenter. And more importantly, I think UCC is going to LCC is going to adopt a new format like shown today here. And the physical exhibit obviously still have some limitation because of SMM. But moving forward, I want to share you that we have this plan to go and create a new platform for your online experience learning. What does it mean? Meaning that very soon you will have a chance to actually learn about SUTD, a new concept or project called Campus X, where we want to make our learning online to be closer to your current physical learning, to be more, to have a higher intimacy and more fun. And more importantly, we want your social interaction with friends, or other students in the cyberspace to be more interactive, as well as to make the learning to be more, I would say, realistic. The whole idea at the end of the day is to make sure that the learning outcome will not be compromised. And on top of that, I think this Campus X opportunity could also take advantage of some of this online, I would say, gamification, for instance, to actually make the learning even more fun and more enjoyable. We are hoping that a combination of our technology as well as pedagogy, and with the expertise from our faculty, we are hoping to launch maybe the pilot run next year, and we will keep everyone posted and even invite students to take part. And look out for this new Campus X YCall platform. I did share this with the keynote speaker, Mr. Tan Xiaoyan, once, and I think this is something that now industry also looking forward to for team-based learning. So with that, I want to just stop here, and I want to thank the 2 keynote speakers who are spending their time with us. I hope you spend the next maybe 2 half afternoon to have an enjoyable time with the presenter, and feel free to stop by the campus center, observe social distancing, to observe some of the poster display. Thank you very much. Go back to you.
Thank you, Prof. Pei, for your inspirational and informational sharing. We would now like to invite architect Tan Xiaoyan Conpo to present today's keynote address. Mr. Tan is the Group Chief Innovation Officer at CPG Corporation. We look forward to Mr. Tan's sharing on the case of innovation from an enterprise perspective.
Thank you, Neha. Can everyone hear me? You hear me fine? Okay, good. SUTD President, Professor Chong Tao Chong, Associate Provost, Professor Pei Kim Leong, SUTD students and staff, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for inviting me to the SUTD Learning Celebration Carnival. 2021. Okay, so when Prof. Pei invited me to share my view on innovation, you have heard from Neha my introduction. That's one of my main focuses in my current role as Group Chief Innovation Officer in CPG. So this topic obviously is my passion. I'm very happy to share. So I'll be presenting the case of innovation from an enterprise perspective. Okay, so of course in this case it's from a CPG perspective. So let me share my slide. Are you able to see my slide?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the title of my sharing. So I'll start by highlighting the main forces of change. There are many forces of change, but I highlight some of the obvious ones that all of us are confronted with. And then next, how organizations and enterprises could generally respond and seize opportunities as we confront these forces of change. Okay. And then I will end off by sharing some of the innovation approaches that CPG has taken. So basically we are built environment professionals and service providers, how we prepare and position ourselves to continue to be relevant and to contribute, to be able to contribute. So with that, I hope that it provides insights to all of you, students and learners about some of the industry, some aspects of the industry, as well as inspiring you to take the innovative spirit that you have acquired in SUTD and then come to the society and contribute to the various industries. Okay, so let me start. So the post-COVID world has drove and shifted or accelerated change in many ways. I would just simply highlight a few obvious ones. And I'm very sure you are actually already very well aware of them. But I just give a snapshot. So first of all, health and wellness have now become the top of the agenda. Okay, what we have perhaps have been taking for granted, such as these things such as public health, has now come to the forefront. Healthcare budget across almost all countries have escalated, and private investment has also flown into healthcare. And this is likely to stay because as COVID-19 becomes endemic, meaning that our government has talked about it a lot, so I think we are all well aware. That means it's not eradicated. We will be living with it in mitigated, in a managed ways. So this mitigation and management requires additional efforts. They will impact lifestyles, ways of doing things, as well as the environments, and that includes the built environment. Okay. And if you recall, PMD also talked about this during Parliament in September 2020. Okay, this is what he said. In fact, COVID-19 is probably not the worst. There's this thing called Disease X, where it could be as contagious as COVID-19, but more deadly, right? So we have to be prepared for that. Okay. We'll not play this. I think you can easily Google this. Then in addition, all these are taking place with aging population. So from these graphics on this slide is by Singapore Department of Statistics. It shows that the ratio between people who are 20 to 64 years, and that's considered young, versus people 65 years or older. So that ratio used to be 13.5 in 1970. When Prof. Chong was a young man, there was a time the ratio was 13.5.
Yeah.
It's now come down to 4.3 in 2020. Okay, obviously you know this. That's why there's a lot of concern about this aging population. And and it was reported, I think just yesterday or very recently, how COVID-19 had resulted in the short-term effects of declining population and fewer marriages. So if such trends continues, it will worsen this problem of aging population. Okay, so in short, what I would like to say is that health and wellness will become a bigger and bigger area of concerns, a lot of challenges, a lot of problems to solve. The next big area of change is related to climate change. And if you ask me, I think this one is a much bigger problem health and wellness or the crisis caused by COVID-19. Okay, the challenge of climate change has been there before COVID-19 and is still there and getting bigger. In some ways, what COVID-19 has done is that it has distracted the world from confronting with this bigger problem. So, but whatever it is, the world has come to a point where there's a widespread recognition, a consensus that we need to neutralize carbon emission in order to stabilize the climate and achieve environmental sustainability. Okay, so what Singapore has done, we have pledged our commitment to the world, to UN and the world. I think we have done that commitment, refreshed that commitment last year, 2020. The first milestone is to hit peak emission of 55 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent by 2030. Okay. Peak, that means currently it's still continuing to grow, the carbon emission in Singapore, but it must hit a peak by 2030. It's not a long time. In fact, we are now end of 2021, right? So it's about 9 years max. Then the next interim milestone is to halve it to 33 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent by 2050. And then at some point in the second half of this century, Singapore wants to achieve net zero emission. Now, what does this mean? What does it mean to all of us? To me, it means that many current ways of doing things will change. Okay, almost all the activities we are doing today emits carbon. Okay, many of these activities will have to change in order to hit the 2 emission targets. Okay, so let me move on to the third major force of change. Okay, and again, this one is, I'm already very sure that you are experiencing it. Okay, digital transformation. So digital transformation was already happening at quite a rapid pace before COVID-19 crisis, but the crisis has certainly accelerated digital transformation. It provides the reason, right? So let's look at some. So this is a slide by McKinsey, a study that shows that how COVID-19 has accelerated the digital transformation. And then we can see the evidence is all over us. First, how could we have coped, right, without digital tracking and e-commerce? We couldn't have coped without this, right, during this COVID-19 crisis. Next, urban lifestyle has also begun to change. Now remote work, split teams, staggered work hours is becoming a norm. It has started to open up a lot of new mindsets and possibilities in urban patterns, in both mobility and land usage. And the third area is that the increased demand for contactless processes, automation, and robotics. You realize all these are very familiar. I think staff and students of SUTD, these are things that you learn, But the world's adoption for all these things are speeding up. Okay, so how is Singapore responding to all these forces of change? You can catch a glimpse of this. It's all summed up in PM Lee's May Day message this year, a few months ago. He said, beyond this year, new opportunities are opening up. The pandemic has accelerated trends like digitalization, automation, and sustainability across all sectors. To seize them, we need to transform our economy for a different post-COVID world. So this is seeing it from a national agenda, national perspective. Then let me give another quote. This is another quote by the late Steve Jobs. I think all of us know him, the founder of Apple. He said, innovation is the ability to see change as an opportunity, not threat. Okay, so let me turn the attention towards the organization, right? So from a perspective of an organization enterprise, how should we view and respond to change? So to explain this, I often like to share this diagram. It's one of my favorite diagrams, which can be found in Dr. David Cropley's YouTube video. I've included a QR code at the left-hand side. So if you are keen to look at this video, you can just use your smartphone, snap on the QR code. Everyone is expert in using QR code nowadays. Okay, so the video is entitled How to Manage Innovation in Your Organization. Now, in this diagram, we can see that change drives two things. On the left-hand side, it drives this thing called market pull, or in economic terms, it's the demand, right? And on the right-hand side, it drives the other thing called technology push in economic design. So the market pull or market demand will provide new problems or new needs. However, the technology push or supply will provide new solutions. The key is this, and I keep reminding our own people that organizations that are able to connect new problems and new solutions will seize these new opportunities. So innovation happens when organizations are able to connect these new problems and new solutions. Okay, and since society changes all the time, right? And what we know is that COVID-19 has accelerated this change. Organizations will have to continuously innovate. In fact, we have to step up the innovation efforts. Okay, so I think this is how we see it at CPG. Innovation has become paramount, and which is why about 2 years ago we decided to drive innovation as a corporate strategy, and that was the time I took up this role as the Group Chief Innovation Officer. So let me briefly talk about how we approach innovation. Okay, so to us, innovation has three characteristics. First, it is new. It involves novelty. It involves something that we have not done before. So next is that it involves a process which requires discipline, as well as methodologies that we can acquire, develop, and manage. Okay, so it's not something random. It's not just a light bulb coming out. It's not just simply about creativity or ideas. Okay, it involves a process, and the process can be managed, must be managed. And third is that it must lead to useful, relevant products and outcome. It could be in the form of physical products, solutions, or applied ideas, okay? But it must be useful and relevant to societies and markets. So how do we manage innovation? We find that the best approach is to align it with how the company has been set up. Because every company has set up with certain structure. This is how you understand how it functions, right? How it works effectively. So innovation efforts have to be aligned with how the company has been set up. So in general, we manage innovation through three broad levels. At individual level, teams level, and then company level. So each level requires different focus, attention, and ways to manage. At individual level, without individuals and staff with the right mindset and passion to go beyond their own comfort zone, to go out of their comfort bubble, no amount of company programs will achieve much innovation. Okay, next, through fostering and supporting various forms of teamwork, it facilitates, it allows individuals to come together to create synergy across different strengths, harnessing different strengths, combining expertise and skills. And then third, some innovation management will have to take place at the company level. For example, forming corporate strategy to set directions, providing funding support, facilitate internal and external partnership, etc. So let me illustrate this. So in the case of CPG, at the company level, we identify and set direction for key business drivers relevant to us. So we create focus and alignment within the company. So currently we have identified 6 key business drivers relevant for us. I will not go into the specifics, but essentially you can recognize that these are the area of change that's driving new demands and opportunities for Singapore and the world. Okay. So at team levels, we foster different forms of team collaboration to encourage innovation. So one of the most effective ways is to identify innovation opportunities within existing infra or building projects that we are undertaking. Because these teams have been formed, right? They're there to deliver a project. Within that project, we try to identify 1 or 2 things or 3 things that we can do, that we can innovate, something we have not done before. Beyond that, we also try to form some cross-functional innovation or R&D teams to develop various initiatives. We also organize Innovation Challenge and give away prizes to celebrate and incentivize innovation. And then at individual staff level, we encourage every individual to pursue their own area of interest, preferably related to the business drivers. But even if they are not, it is fine, because as long as they identify areas that they are passionate about, that they would devote their own time and effort to pursue and develop. And we will find ways to align this to the company's collective capabilities, and we will find ways to support them. So in this sense, I want to affirm the type of learning spirits as displayed in the SUTD's LCC Carnival. Okay, because this is very much valued by organizations like us, and it's something that we are trying to do in the industry. So I may come back to this slide again. I'm nearing the end of my presentation. So innovation happens when organizations connect new problems with new solutions. But certain significant transformation requires systems-wide change. It is simply not possible for a single firm to drive systems transformation on its own. And we see cities and urban environment as the system of systems. Many problems we face today are due to poor urbanization, or poor approach, or unsystematic way of urbanization. However, when properly planned and executed, we do believe that cities and urbanization will also be at the forefront of solutions. And then in the next slide, you can see that there are so many urban issues interacting with each other, presenting many problems and challenges. So as a result, some of the more recent projects and business areas that we are developing could not have been possible. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is that these problems and challenges provided opportunities, and some of the more recent opportunities that we are seizing, CBG as a company, how we are approaching and trying to seize these opportunities, could not have been possible without the ability to innovate. So I will not go into details, but some of it involves things like pandemic resilient design, which we built upon based on our core expertise in healthcare. We have successfully won a tender to do the Southeast Coast climate study on the sea level rise. Again, this one requires a lot of innovation or R&D on the project, within the project itself. And then on the facilities management, we are trying to tap on a lot of this technology and finding new ways to digitalize, to move into smart estate planning and facilities management. Okay, so I would like to end with one last quote by Henry Kaiser. He's an American industrialist. He said, problems are only opportunities in work clothes. So there are two takeaways. First, see problems as opportunities. Apply your innovative mind to find solutions. Second, while innovation sounds heroic and vogue, it sounds fashionable. Creativity and ideas alone are not enough. It requires discipline, hard work, perseverance, methods, entrepreneurial spirits, and a process-driven approach in order to bring results and outcome. Okay. To conclude, may I congratulate the SUTD staff and students for another year of success despite the pandemic. And I wish that the graduates will bring along the innovative spirits and experience that they've acquired to help industries transform, help bring solutions to Singapore and cities in the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tan, for the insightful sharing and informative experience. We'll take a short break and be back for the student sharing session at 2:15 p.m.
Thanks a lot for your presentation. Very nice presentation. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sharin, thanks. We'll catch up offline later on.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. So I will take my leave now because I have another meeting coming up. So we catch up again. Sharin.
Okay. Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sharin. I will take my leave as well. I'll catch up with you later. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Bye bye.
See you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
This Europe has exposed me to different data modeling methods and has taught me to use Python to build different predictive models. And overall, I just found this Europe very interesting and meaningful.
Hello, I'm Charlene, and I was on the fence between ESD and ISTD before I joined the Europe. But I hope to be able to make a decision after the experience. But here I am still being unsure between both pillars. And now that I'm also after going through it, I'm now also considering DAI. But that aside, I'm still glad that I decided to embark on this Europe as it allowed me to gain some exposure in the area of data science and also pick up some machine learning from the backgrounds.
Hello, my name is Zulfikar. You can just call me Zul. I had a keen interest in aviation business as it was what I studied in poly. However, when I saw an aviation-related Europe, I immediately jumped on the opportunity to put into practice what I've learned so far. And so far, the journey has been great because I've been blessed with awesome teammates and it has been an eye-opener. And the way you saw has influenced my preference for ESD as my field of choice. So we'll see how that goes. So I hand back the time to Subesh.
Okay, thanks guys. So here's a brief introduction about our project. Our project's focus was on understanding how flight delays evolve over time and how weather conditions affect airport capacity. Understanding these would allow planners to decide what the best airport expansion measures are in the medium to long term. From a management standpoint, this information will allow air traffic controllers and airport operators to perform better decisions throughout the operation periods. For this project, we focused on the 7 busiest airports in Southeast Asia. After obtaining the necessary data sets from various organizations, we used queuing models and machine learning models to start the predictions and analysis. Before all of this, we had to ensure that we understood the project well beyond what we had read in the project description in my portal. So, we booked a meeting with Prof. Nuno and he patiently explained the project to us and clarified any doubts that we had. Once we had all decided that we wanted to work on this, we sent in our applications and got started. We spent the first few weeks refreshing our Python knowledge and also going through some R programming tutorials. We also did a few regression and machine learning modeling tutorials so that we could really understand what we were going to be working with. After a few weeks of this, we applied what we learned to create our first analysis, and after ensuring that it was working well, we incrementally included more variables and worked towards creating a better prediction model.
Right. So now we're talking about a little bit more about the project details that we had to go through all this while. Right. So as mentioned earlier, we had to spend the first few weeks of the project refreshing our Python knowledge and going through some R programming tutorials to equip themselves with the necessary knowledge to take on this Europe. Right, so for the unfamiliar, R is a software environment that helps researchers deal with large amounts of data and statistics with ease. However, it's normal to associate data analysis with the use of Microsoft Excel to extract meaningful data. However, when you have extensive and endless amount of data to go through, it might get daunting. So this is where R steps in and saves the day. We underwent R programming tutorials that were available online that is made possible by the online open courseware by MIT. So it's an 8-topic course covering things such as linear regression, logistic regression, and random forest concepts. So all these concepts were essential for us to understand before we could go on and analyze the different data in this Europe. So at first, it all sounded daunting to embark on unfamiliar concepts on our own, especially during this pandemic where everything's online and we sort of can't meet each other. However, the online tutorials are structured in a way where the average person could quickly catch on. So if you are genuinely interested, you'll be able to find these videos on YouTube and follow along and learn more about our programming. Right, so we use our program to mainly clean up the data from different CSV files and combine to one single file that will display the data in a more meaningful way. So this was especially important as the raw data that were obtained in the initial stage were not really that meaningful if they were to use in the original form. So you can actually think of this slide as between the data that will be useful for us to make comparisons more easily. From this sense, for example, what you see here on the screen is that the raw weather data that we obtained in the initial stage. Just by looking at it, there are endless rows of numbers which are meaningless to us. And when you have 7 different CSV files with the same format of data presentation, it's very easy to feel overwhelmed and lost in this sea of data. Therefore, when we input these different CSV files into the R program, what it helps us to do is it strips data from each file that will be important for us. So in this example, we are concerned in the amount of lightning strikes a particular airport experiences in a time period. Equip the longitudes, latitudes of the airports of interest along with their respective time zones. What the R program helps us to do was it compiles the instances which includes the exact date and time where lightning strikes in the vicinity of a particular airport occur during a fixed time period. So with all this data, we will be able to make an easier comparison between the airports of interest and subsequently determine if the amount of lightning and airport experiences will actually affect flight delays. So imagine having to choose 7 different CSV files just for this. So our Europe would have taken much longer with the help of. Right, now I will give the time over to Aziz.
Okay, thanks Zul. So hello everyone, I'm Aziz here again. And now I will explain how we use machine learning with Python during our Europe. When we say machine learning, we refer to the use of mathematical models to study and understand data so that we can create algorithms to predict future trends. In this project, we use Python because it has many libraries like Pandas, Scikit-learn, NumPy, and Matplotlib to aid in machine learning. Our goal was to use the past data on flight delays and create a machine learning model that could predict future flight delays as accurately as possible. Now, the first thing we needed to do was process our data for each country. With so much data at our fingertips, we filtered out the necessary ones to build a base version of our code, which would then form the foundation of our model. This meant having Python read the number of delays and their delay times first, while considering only a few variables, like the lightning data that we curated from our R program mentioned by Zul. Next, we begin to model the data. We remove the outliers and then randomly split the dataset into training and test sets for our model. The training set is used to help the program understand how the different variables affect the delays, and afterwards we create predictions on the test set. The test set behaves as unseen and actual data that we apply to the program, and this will translate to the performance and quality of our model. When we have very few variables, we use the multiple linear regression model, which is something that we have learned in our freshman year. We also used a random forest model when we had more variables using k-fold cross-validation to achieve better estimates. This is because k-fold cross-validation increases the likelihood that each observation appears in both the test sets and the training sets, therefore providing better accuracy on our model. The performances of our models are translated into graphs and R-square values for comparisons between different countries. So an example of the graph can be seen here, and this is produced by our random forest model. This graph has an R-square value to gauge the model's performance relative to the airport's data. We also considered the shapes of the red graph against the blue graph, which represents the model's predictions against the actual data, respectively. As we can see here, although the red graph is not matching the blue graph at every point, their trends are similar enough, and this shows that the model is able to roughly predict when there will be delays and their estimated durations. Lastly, we tried to expand on our model by introducing more variables. Since we had data on other things like wind speed, wind direction, queuing delays, visibility, or the size of the aircraft, we could easily add them onto our code and make our models more comprehensive. It is in this step that we may learn that some variables affect flight delays more than we believe. Now I'll pass the time on to Chloe.
Hi, so I will now bring you through the different findings that we got at the end of our whole project. Okay, so as we applied the various models to our data, we aimed to optimize the R-square in general. And we looked at our random forest regression models and tweaked them accordingly based on our variables, which we realized were more significant in impacting our results. Overall, we also realized how there are different variables and different areas have different lightning data, and that might not necessarily affect those variables might not necessarily affect certain areas. For example, like in Singapore, lightning is a very common variable, but in other places like Taipei Airport, it might not be as much of a big role in terms as there are lesser thunderstorms there. So after running our machine learning models, we always refer to our graphs to identify the improvements that we need to make to the model. The model highlights the predicted graphs and plotted to the original recorded data. As said earlier by Aziz, here we have the the blue graphs and the red graphs. So the blue ones show us the true data that was plotted and the predicted ones based on our models. So as you can see here, that Bangkok has a pretty wide difference in terms of true and predicted. And from this model, I think the R-square value we got the best and highest was Singapore. So yeah, as I said earlier about tweaking, by doing so and increasing our R-square values, we then improve the accuracy of our models. So to sort and identify which factors play a bigger part in the number and duration of the delays, we plot variable importance plots. So what exactly is variable importance plots? Well, they are able to show us the largest variable expiratory power as shown above, and the variable with the strongest relation to the airport delays. So as we said earlier about tweaking the variables, we are then able to identify which variables are more important and which variables do not need to be included in our model in future. So we then remove the variables which are unimportant and help to improve the accuracy of a random forest regression model. So here we can see the top 5 variables that were necessary in helping predict the airport delays in the respective countries. So in Singapore, as seen on the left, you see the number of arrivals and the queue delays are the top 2. And for Bangkok, queue delays and number of arrivals are the top 2. And similarly for the last country. So we looked at the R-square values for each day and for the average per day overall a period. So as shown in this table above, you can see the different R-square values plotted for the king model, the random forest, with weather and without weather. So in general, you can see that with weather, we found that the weather variables played a biggest impact to our results. And so we then consider that in our random forest model, which then we decided that the random forest model, as shown above, is more versatile and is able to allow and input more different types of variables which can be considered. So overall, the lining variables were more significant to most of efforts, and in the region due to the region's geography and similar climate across all the countries in the ASEAN region. And the highest R-square values obtained were then plotted in this figure. So that then tells us that these variables are then able to kind of help these efforts in future on how they're able to reduce such delays and prepare for such circumstances.
Okay. Of course, this journey wouldn't be a fulfilling one without its challenges. So to start off, the COVID-19 restrictions were tightened once the summer began, and one of our group members was actually overseas throughout the whole period. So this meant that we could not really meet physically, both with each other to discuss our learnings and findings, but also with our prof. So going entirely online was initially quite a downer for us because we had hoped to be able to meet up to discuss the project together in person. And it also made us slightly less efficient in our discussions and coordination as a group. But eventually we got accustomed to our online meetings and managed to conclude the Europe fully. And at the same time, we also learned to sharpen our communication skills, and because the online format made us work more in silo, and we had to update each other on our respective progress and challenges frequently, which was a little challenging because we were working with machine learning and code, and then we are not really familiar with the technicalities involved in the jargon yet. And thankfully, there were also intermittent periods where restrictions were loosened, and some of us were actually able to meet in person as a group to work on the project together. And honestly, the fact that we were able to work together as a group was one of the highlights of the whole experience for me, because we were able to learn together and troubleshoot together, teach each other and solve each other's problems. And I think that sense of camaraderie with group mates and the positive learning environment that we create for each other is something that I've really appreciated throughout the whole Europe process. And then I would encourage anyone who's considering a Europe to go into it with a mind keen to learn, and not just by yourself, but also keen to learn from others and keen to help others learn. And I think that would make your Europe journey a lot more enriching and enjoyable. And then another challenge that we encountered, this one is maybe more technical. It has to do with missing data. So at the start of the project, we were still quite inexperienced and unfamiliar with data manipulation through Python. And as a result, we stumbled quite a bit when we realized that our data manipulation resulted in a significant amount of data going missing. And it was a good learning experience, though. And because through this, we learned to always check our work before proceeding, as errors can and will occur, especially when you're like us learning as you go. And as our prof told us from this incident, a rule of thumb in data science is to always verify data at loss. And I think we've all like gained that takeaway. Yeah, but however, sometimes missing data is also like can also occur by no fault of the data scientists. Because as we work on the project, we also realized that there were some discrepancies in our lightning data, which we've shown like in our research findings to be a variable which significantly contributed to our model. So we observed that for a number of countries, there were extended periods of time with no lightning data recorded, which didn't make sense given the climate of their locations. So that was when we realized that our data source did not actually provide a very complete set of data. And at that point, there was nothing we could like really do about it. So we just went with the flow and tried our best with what we had. And then in the end, some models ended up not working as well as we hoped they would. But we are still glad that we were able to produce some successful models in the end. And this taught us to make the best out of undesirable situations that were out of our control and also make the best of what we have in times like this.
Okay, thanks, Shirley. So for the takeaways from this project, we learned some basic skills of R language and some machine learning models in Python. It's very fascinating to use these skills to solve real-world problems like the airport delays. By doing this project, we take an important step in understanding the major of engineering systems and design, and especially for me, because most of the time when I was doing this project, I was back in China. So it challenged me a lot because of the far distance between me and other teammates. But based on the help from Prof and my teammates and my own hard work, I still successfully finished my work. This project does not only help me gain more knowledge about machine learning, but also let me improve my communication ability. And then let me do a brief conclusion of our team's project. Actual delays may be different from the prediction results we get, but our quantitative analysis provides a new way to better predict airport delays in both arrivals and departures. By using our program and machine learning models in Python language, we get plenty of valuable graphs, including landing graphs, variable importance graphs, airport delay prediction graphs with R-squared label, and so on. With the factors which significantly affect airport delays, we can get a better prediction and make a better decision to optimize flight schedules, not just in one airport, but in different airports from different countries. So to end up our team's presentation, we would like to say thanks to Prof. Nuno Ribeiro and really appreciate his help and guidance provided for us during the summer. It's a great opportunity for us to understand the use of machine learning in predicting airport delays. Okay, that's all about our team's presentation. Thank you for listening.
Okay, so we have a Slido opened up with the code Nuno21. If you have any questions, you can feel free to key in here. We have some time for Q&A. If you have any questions, you could also feel free to type into the live chat in the YouTube stream. So we'll wait a while for your questions to come in. Okay, so we're starting to have a few questions. So the first question we have was, is there any funds provided to do the UROP? So particularly for this UROP, we did not need any funding not that we know of, because a lot of the data was provided from our prof, which were provided from the different organizations like CAS. So I'm sure there are other Europe's around the school that also require funding, and they do request for funding. So you can always find out from other groups about their other projects. And then we have a second question, which was, how was Nuno as a professor? So I think I'll open this up to my group if they want to say anything about our Prof Nuno. For me, I would say he was very nice, considering we had never met him before. And he gave us a good impression of what ESD professors are like. So maybe another teammate?
Okay, yeah, I would like to add on that he was very, very understanding and very patient with us, considering how all of us were like still Term 2 students when we approached him, and we didn't have much experience in the work that we had to do. But he was still willing to give us a lot of, like, more than enough time for us to prepare, and he even provided materials for us to gain expertise in the machine learning models before he expected any results from us. And he was also like, he guided us along the way at like almost every single step when we needed it, despite his very busy schedule. So I would say that he's a great prof to work with, and if we have, and I would say that all our teammates would agree that if we had the opportunity to work with him again, we would. Yeah.
Yeah, I also think he's a really helpful prof because for this project, at first the link for the MIT tutorials for me cannot work, so I emailed him and he helped me find another website which can work for me. So I think he's really a helpful prof, and for me, if there is another chance, I want to work with him again.
Okay, how about we move on to the next question, which is, how do you tackle the issue of missing data? Okay, so maybe I'll take this one. Okay, so a bit of the process of how we did this was we each took a different country to analyze. And so after we analyzed it, we compared each other's data. We realized that some of us had different starting dates and some of us had different periods in which we had missing data. So for us, we had to consider, of course, we can't compare countries with missing data to those with data within the same period. So we either had to compare those within the same period, or we exclude those out. So since we had 7 countries to analyze, we could still analyze at least, like, let's say one of them had missing data, we could still analyze 6 different countries. So it affected us a little bit, but it did not affect the results of other countries. Okay, then one more, how long did it take to do this project? So our Europe was actually scheduled to start the moment our summer began. So technically May 1st, but we didn't start then. We started somewhere in mid-May, and we had the entire summer to complete it. So it was until 30th August, around there. So that alone, we had about 4 months to complete this. So it was actually quite a big time period for us because we had some time to learn R and more and refresh our Python at the start of this Europe. And only after that, then we moved on to do the main parts of our Europe, which was to analyze the data. So I would think that with this large time frame, we were grateful enough to have the time to learn all these extra stuff before moving on. If not, we would go in and dive right into the data without knowing anything, and that wouldn't have been fruitful at all. So once we had the base version of our code, all that was left to do was just consider other data and variables. So if we had time, we would add on another variable and try to compare. So it was all about trying to expand the model afterwards. Yeah. I got one question targeted at Zul, asking which was your favorite part of this Europe?
What's my favorite part of the Europe? Since everyone has been talking about all the technical stuff, I'll balance it out by saying the time I spent with my group members trying to figure out everything, especially when the codes weren't working and when the model wasn't working, was the best part of the Europe. Yeah. Because I think, like, in programming, the I mean, the more memorable parts will come from you trying to solve your own code and debug your code lah. Yeah, so that is the best part of the Europe. Yeah, getting to know my teammates more on a more personal level. Yeah, that's my part. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Zul. So the last question I'm gonna answer is: did you explore other programs to use for your project, like SQL to filter the data, for example? Right. So when we first met our prof Nuno, he introduced us to R and Python, that which were the two main programs that he was using. And so we will, because we only knew Python at the time, we wanted to go and learn R. And our prof Nuno told us that R was pretty similar to Python, and it was quite easy to grasp. And sure enough, it was. We didn't have time to go and explore other programs, and I think if we had the time, we probably would as well, because I think when we do a UROC, sometimes time may be an issue, especially when you are when you are new to learning new things. When you want to tackle a project, you need to have as much knowledge as you can. So we focused on using R and Python, and I would say they were both helpful enough. I'm sure SQL could have been used as well, but I think based on what our prof told us, it was easier to pick up R at the time. Yeah. And then the last thing somebody said, not a question, but well done to the team. Look forward to seeing the team do great things in your respective pillars. So thank you to this anonymous person. We hope you're having a good day too. Yes. All right, then that is it from us. So we want to thank you for your attention to our presentation. We hope you enjoy the rest of the LCC. So we would like to pass the time over to the MC. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was quite interesting, and I'm sure that all of you who are watching would agree. So thank you for your wonderful sharing of your experience. Next up, we have Andre to talk about medical 3D printing. I'll pass the time to you, Andre.
Hi, okay, great, thank you. Let me just share my screen. All right, great. So hi, everybody. I'm Andre. I hope you can hear me well. I will be going through medical 3D printing as an overview of an undergraduate research opportunities project, or UROP, that was previously shared. So let's dive right into my presentation. So a bit of the project background is that we work with Prof. Prusa Printer from EPD and SUTD. She is the principal investigator for all of our 3D printing projects. She's a senior lecturer and program director for SUTD, CGH Healthcare, and SUTD Bachelor Duke NUS track. Her research areas include biomedical engineering, and her pillar and cluster is engineering product development, or EPD, and the STEM, which is science, math, and technology. So before I begin my presentation proper, if you have any questions for our group for the projects that I mentioned, you can scan this QR code or go to the link at wooclap.com/xuanxy to send in your questions so that I can answer them at the end of the presentation. Alternatively, you can send in the questions into the YouTube live comment section. So let's begin with the presentation. This will be the overview. First, I will introduce a bit about 3D printing, and as well as its applications in a medical setting. Then I'll talk about the operationalization of 3D printing facilities at the lab that we work at, as well as talk about the models for otolaryngological applications and neurosurgical applications. Then I'll talk a bit about the future work that we have planned for these projects. So first, I would like to give a brief introduction of 3D printing so that we all have a bit of context for what for the presentation. So what is 3D printing? I mean, most of us in SUTD, we know what's 3D printing because in our first years, we have a 3D printer pretty much in every class. But for those who don't know, 3D printing or additive manufacturing is the construction of a three-dimensional object, generally in a layer-wise manner. So first you take the object which is on the left. You can see this 3D object which can be developed with CAD, or CAD stands for Computer Aided Design, and you take it and you put it into a slicing software, which we usually use Cura, where it takes the three-dimensional model and it slices it layer by layer so that the 3D printer will have sort of instructions to follow when 3D printing. This will be exported as code and then fed into the 3D printer, and the 3D printer will then print the model, as you can see on the right. So this is one of the models that is quite popular in the 3D printing community. This is the boat is called Benchy. So there are different types of 3D printing. Most of us are familiar with Fdm printers, which is the first one on the list, which is short for fused deposition modeling. So FDM works by melting a thermoplastic filament, which is sort of like a thread of plastic, which is melted at the nozzle. So the nozzle heats up to about 200 over degrees Celsius. And after the filament is melted, it is then deposited layer by layer onto a platform to form the ultimate object. So in the previous slide, this is where the slicing comes in, where the software cuts the model layer by layer, and then the printer knows where to deposit the material and slowly build up the object from scratch. So the next two types of 3D printing that I would mention is a bit lesser known. So the second is stereolithography. Stereolithography, or SLA for short, stands for a 3D printing technique that uses UV light to cure resin on a stage. So if FDM is printing from bottom up, we can think of this as printing from top down, as the stage will move up as the print continues. So similar to the FDM printers, this UV light would shine where we would like to cure the resin onto the stage layer by layer, which would be processed by software. So lastly, we also work with multi-jet fusion. So multi-jet fusion works by first depositing materials onto a print bed and then applying fusing agents, and after that using a heating element or energy to fuse the layers layer by layer until you get your intended product. So moving on, I'm sure some of you might have seen these sort of images before, perhaps in movies or TV shows, when the doctors take the MRIs or CT scans and they look at these black and white pictures. So actually we use this as well in our projects. So this is called Dicom Data, which is short for Digital Imaging and Communications in Medicine dataset. So this is obtained from anonymized data that we obtain from radiology department in hospitals. So for our projects, we work with Singapore General Hospital, and the radiological department gives us these Dicom data sets to work with and to print our models. So as mentioned, these data sets are obtained through CT and MRI scans and exist as layered scans in 3 axes. So this is sort of you can think of it as different planes. So we have the sagittal plane, the axial plane, and the coronal plane. If you look at my camera, this is the sagittal, and then this is the axial, and this is the coronal. So this is represented in the 3 different colors of the Dicom data. So we use this data to develop 3D models. We can sort of select different thresholds of colors. So for example, this white color over here represents bone. This is a head model. So when we want to select this bone, for example, we can select the white color and we can play with the thresholds to get exactly what we want. And this is then exported as a standard tessellation language or STL format, which most of you who have done 3D modeling will be familiar with. So after we get these models, we can proceed to print them with the 3D printers that we use. So to talk a bit more about that, first I'll mention the operationalization of the 3D printing lab with our collaborator Duke NUS. So we sort of set up the lab at Duke NUS, which is the digital printing lab with them. So in that lab, we have two Fdm printers and one SLA printer. So the Fdm printers that we used, the one that we had set up was the Prusa printer. So some of you may be familiar with the Prusa lineup. We got the one that could print up to 5 filaments, which means that we can theoretically print with up to 5 colors with a multi-material print. And the materials that we usually print on the Prusa is the polylactic acid or PLA and acrylonitrile butadiene styrene or ABS. So these both of these materials are thermoplastics. Next, we also have stereolithographic printers. We have the Forms 3 from Formlabs, and we are able to print with different resins. So for our project, we print with normal white resin, but we also use specialized resins like with sort of special characteristics like durable, tough, and so on and so forth. So after printing, these resins would have to be washed with isopropyl alcohol and then cured with UV light in order to get the intended characteristics that we want. So moving on, I'll talk about otolaryngological applications to the 3D models that we print. So this otolaryngological is a big word, but some of you may know it as ENT, the ENT department in hospitals. So ENT stands for ear, nose, throat. So these ear, nose, throat surgeons, we work with them to have sort of applications to 3D printing. So for our particular project, the objective was to develop 3D printed temporal bone models for surgical simulation and training. So where is the temporal bone? So we can see this model of the skull. The temporal bone is essentially this bone that houses all of your hearing accessories, hearing organ accessories, which is like your eardrum and your tympanic which is your tympanic membrane, and as well as your cochlea and all that things, which I will go into a bit more detail later. So our objective is to recreate this bone for the applications include using it as cochlear implantation rehearsals, mastodectomy simulations, and ossicular chain reconstruction. So some of these terms may be a bit medical, but I would go through each of them in more detail now. So some of the considerations that we sort of wanted with the temporal bone model are as follows. So everyone knows that, okay, maybe I could give a bit more of clarity. So this is sort of the eardrum in everyone's ear. So I'm pretty sure most of us have heard of what a eardrum is. So this eardrum is then connected to these 3 tiny bones, which are called the ossicles or the ossicular chain. So this is explained a bit more in detail on the right-hand side. The ossicular chain consists of the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. So the malleus is the one that is attached to your ear membrane that vibrates and hits against the incus and then the stapes to produce noise in your ear. So these 3 bones are actually really quite tiny. This gray circle that I've drawn over the picture is equivalent to a 10-cent coin. So you imagine the size of a 10-cent coin, and then you imagine the size of the stapes that we have to print. So this is one of the major considerations when we sort of design the models that we want to print out with the 3D printers. And because of these considerations, we also have to make some limitations where some of the some of the features may not be able to be printed properly. So moving on to the snail-like structure at the bottom, this is the cochlea, which also has the semicircular features to it, which helps you balance essentially. So the staypiece attaches to the cochlea and sort of conducts sound through this organ, and then this organ will then feed through the auditory nerve to your brain so that you can perceive the sound. So this cochlea has to be very well delineated for our project. So because one of the applications is to have cochlear implantation, so some of you may know that as hearing aid implants. So how a hearing aid works is that you thread in a small wire through the cochlea so that the electrical signals can be translated into the ear. For this purpose, the cochlea has to be completely hollow so that the doctors can thread in a wire through the cochlea. So another important part of this project was the mastoid air cells, because the doctors wanted to practice drilling into the bone from the area just superior to the ear or above the ear. So this mastoid air cells, as you can see, it exists as this sort of spongy matrix of bone, which is, you can sort of tell why they're called air cells, because the bone has a lot of these gaps in between. So we had to really recreate this with 3D printing, and one of the challenges that we had was to connect all of these mastoid air cells with one another, and to make sure that they didn't just come out printed as just weird missing hollow area. Yeah, so that was one of the challenges and considerations that we had going into the model. So a bit of the findings that we had, or perhaps some of the methods, is that we printed this with different materials. So what you're looking at is resin. We found that resin was quite similar to human bone in the sort of the color, the texture, and as well as the haptic feedback. So the haptic feedback happens when the surgeons drill into the model and to sort of, especially the mastoid air cells portion of it. So in the next slide, I have some pictures of Dr. Joyce from ENT CGH, the ENT surgical department, where she used actual surgical tools to drill into the models that we created. So you can sort of see these holes that resemble the mastoid air cells that I was talking about earlier. So also, if you can notice this blue thread goes into the cochlea, which Dr. Joyce sort of thread through to make sure that it was hollow. So we developed the 3D model with Dicom Data, and we printed with various materials, PLA and resin. We found that resin performed slightly better, and PLA, because it's the Fdm model, it has a lower melting point, and so it melted when Dr. Joyce was trying to drill through it. So we also tested for the haptic feedback of my mastoidectomy and also the implantation of the cochlear implant. And most of these were quite successful. So in the project now, we are currently producing quite a few temporal bone models so that we could have various ENT surgeons drill it at their next conference. Yeah. So moving on to the neurosurgical applications. So the sort of objective was to develop a 3D printed anterior cranial fossa model for surgical simulation and training. So what is the anterior cranial fossa? So this is sort of the skull from a different point of view. This is top down. You can see that, you can imagine that if we cut the skull axially and we remove the brain, this is what we would see. The anterior cranial fossa is sort of the front of the head. So here would be where, just below this would be where your eyes are and your nose. So the applications of this would be the anterior clindoidectomy, which is to cut away portions like this process right here, as well as supraorbital craniotomy, which is to cut away the top part just above your eye to review your brain and get access to brain tumors and stuff like that. So some of the considerations that we had was that upon the first segmentation, the cribriform plate, which is this bottom area right here, was quite dehiscent or has a lot of holes. So one of the considerations was that we had to plug or cover up all these holes with the software just to make sure that the models were accurate. So if you look on the right, the different foramens or holes are very specific for the neurosurgical, for the neurosurgeons, and each hole is very important for them, anatomically speaking. So all these holes are extraneous, and we had to cover them up. So moving on, we had multiple drill trials with neurosurgery from SGH. So we have Dr. Jia Shi over here and Dr. Tian Ming, both of which are neurosurgical residents with neurosurgery in SGH. And they performed drill trials on the different models that we had. This would be the eye socket. So this is where your eye would be. And this would be the area above your eye. So they're trying to drill this through to find out what is the consistency and the haptic feedback of drilling through this skull. So the materials that we considered were a few. We have PLA, PETG, polyjet, and curable resin. So for PLA, we found that it was easy to print and the materials was quite cheap, but the low melting point means that the material tended to melt when drilled, which messed with the haptic feedback for the surgeons. For PETG, there's a slightly higher melting point, and it's also cost effective, but it's also a bit more difficult to print, which decreases the sort of anatomical accuracy that is important for the surgeons. We also consider polyjet, which had high anatomical accuracy and good tactile properties, but was expensive and not cost effective. So we settled that the best material was the resin that I was talking about, which had high anatomical accuracy, good tactile properties, and was not as expensive as polyjet. And as well, they also simulate the bone dust, which was quite important. So if you can see on the, if I were to go back to this image, you can see this dust. This sort of simulates the actual bone dust that will appear when you drill a normal actual human skull. Yep. So right now we are gearing up for an actual clinical study to see which material is actually the best when we generalize it across 15 neurosurgeons. So the models that we developed had to change a bit. We made a base inset and printed this insert in different materials to save on printing time as well as printing cost. So what happens is that when we have this base, we bring it to the neurosurgeons and we just insert this little insert in, and then they can drill this insert without touching the bigger base. Yeah. So that's the current state of the models, and that wraps it up for the neurosurgical part. Now, talking a bit of the future work for 3D printing, I'm happy to share some of the projects that are currently ongoing and an evolution for the current 3D printing models that we made. So the first is surgical guides. We design and develop surgical guides to complement surgical procedures for the surgeons. We also have bioscaffolds. So we're experimenting with new ways to develop biocompatible scaffolds to sort of put in to implant into human bodies so that the bone would basically grow into these bioscaffolds. Lastly, we also have a project supporting medical education where we design new interfaces for the study of medicine. So you can see the picture here is a 3D print of a liver, which sort of would be helping the students in Duke anyway sort of learn about anatomy and physiology better. So with that, I would like to wrap up my presentations. And again, if you have any questions, you can either type it into the live chat in YouTube, or you can reach out via WooClap. So perhaps I'll give a few minutes for people to type in their questions. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to type it into the Woo clap that I've set up, or you could type it into the YouTube Live. Okay, I received a question. Why am I interested in this area? So I think personally, I'm quite interested in the medical scene to develop sort of new ways for physicians to provide care for patients. But especially because in year one, I had quite extensive experience with 3D printing. So I sort of wanted to take up a project that used some of the skills that I learned and apply them to really medical applications. So I think these projects gave me that avenue to apply these skills. I think that I'm quite lucky because I got to work with actual practicing doctors and sort of develop solutions with them in collaboration. So that was quite a highlight for me for this project. Okay, I got another question. What is the future of 3D printing and how do you see the advancement of this technology? So I think this is a really good question. I think that 3D printing really has a lot of potential, especially in the medical scene. I think that the future of 3D printing is that it will become more commercially available. So remember I talked about the polyjet printers. The polyjet printers were quite expensive. So those you can think of it as huge cabinets for printers, and they cost up to 6 figures, 100, maybe 200K. I think in the near future, this will be a bit more accessible, a bit more affordable. And I think that because of that, the medical sector will be a lot more open. And as well, because it is very new in the medical sector, I guess there's a lot of procedural processes that need to go through, especially when it comes to 3D printing and new technologies. So stuff like the approvals, or in Singapore, I think it's the HRA approvals. So all these approvals have to come through. I think once we get a better sensing and a bit more experience that 3D printing could be revolutionized medicine. Yeah. So if there are no more questions, perhaps I'll end my presentation. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me, and I'll pass it back to the MC to carry on with the rest of the LCC. Thank you.
Wow, that was quite very interesting. Thank you so much for your sharing, Andre. Claudia and Sheen will now be sharing more about the virtual fact. So I'm going to pass the time on to them.
Thanks, Neha. Give me a moment to let me share my screen. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emission, and I'm Claudia today. And today we'll be talking about Virtual Fact 2021. So what is Virtual Fact? Virtual Fact stands for Virtual Freshman Asian Cross-Curricular Trips, and it's an annual immersion program open only to freshmen to participate on your first year in SUTD. So this program is actually incorporated in your specific freshman courses and gives freshmen the opportunity to network and learn with students from partnering universities. So here's an overview of the FACT programs that we did last summer. So these programs were in collaboration with universities in Shenzhen, Jakarta, Indonesia, and Brunei. So I'll be talking about DTI at UPM, which is the Design Thinking and Innovation at Prusa Printer University at Indonesia. So this university is actually Indonesia's leading business and product development university, and where they applied design thinking. So in this program, we basically applied design thinking to design a multifunctional chair to meet various user needs. So the objective of this FAC was that our designs will be submitted to the IDA Design Awards at the end of the program. So we actually learned a lot through the session, where we had lessons on design thinking processes and CAD rendering. We gained inspiration from the IDA Design Awards, and also had various sharing sessions with Mr. Abi Abdullah, which is a well-known furniture designer in Indonesia. So something that's interesting, right, is that he actually designed a chair that was featured in a Korean drama show, which is the Failure to Love You, where he designed this unique furniture made out of rattan. So as we were inspired by the various ideas in the IDA Design Awards, we came up with this design, which is a productive dome. So targeting a new normal of working from home, this is a batik pattern retractable dome that acts as a multifunctional workspace. It is rotationally adjustable with a seat, monitor, and table space and lighting that is able to make full use of the rotational space. Also, it has an all-in-one controller at the armrest of the seat that allows you to control every aspect of this productive dome. So what's good about this dome is that it assures your privacy and allows you to be productive in a very private space. Even though this program was completely virtual, we actually had a lot of fun and forged a lot of bonds through the way, even in this 1 week of program. And basically, it was a very interesting experience for all of us. Claudia, what about you?
Well, actually, looking at like the batik design dome that Shin presented, right? It's my first time looking at it actually, because I didn't really see his slides. But it looks like the soles that you did for the rhino, right? Last time when you said you were interested, Shin.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is quite cool because like as you all can tell, right, this FAC program actually give us a broader perspective of like our courses in term 2 and also going to our courses in term 3, like for the next one that I'll be talking about on Science for Sustainable World and Design Energy System. So they actually like give us a broader perspective and give us like a chance to go out of like our textbook and to see what the world is like in these courses and like the aspects of like learning that we are doing. So next slide. Yeah, so this is like my group for the Science for Sustainable World FAC program to Brunei. And what happened was that like signing up for this FAC virtual program, right, I was quite disheartened to be honest, because like the pandemic had stolen our chance, right, for a real life opportunity to meet those from Brunei and to interact with the wildlife and plants firsthand. And to be honest, I came to SUTD like thinking that like these are the experiences that I live for. Like I really want to go out and like go to student exchange so that I can see like things out of Singapore, you know, because like Singapore after a few times you feel bored already, right? So like, however, like when we interacted with the Brunei students in the breakout room over Zoom, I realized how it did not break the experience of connecting with them out of the picture. Instead, we still connected over stories, some epic and some actually scary. And this experience was instead a heartfelt one where we got to make friends who come from different backgrounds, which gives us unique points of view on how animals in different countries behave. So the next slide. Yeah, so like other than the Science for Sustainable World FAC trip that I went to Brunei, I actually also went for the DES ExecTU one, and it's actually the Design Energy Systems in Shenzhen University, because I was interested in the mod energy, okay, I forgot the name of the mod, but it's a term 3 energy mod. And that's the one that I wanted to take because EPD is one of my options. So that's why I thought that this FAC program would value add to like my knowledge of what EPD is and like what energy systems is. Yeah. So next slide. Yeah. So this is my group for the ExecTU one. And as you can tell, it's quite a big group. And if you actually notice in the background, right, some of our background is the same because like what happened is that SUTD really tried to implement as much physical interaction as possible, even with the COVID situation, which is quite disheartening. So what happened was like they actually allocated a part of the library for all of us to watch to actually engage in this virtual experience together. So what happened was like it was quite cool because like we would all sit with our own earpiece and like saying different things but hearing the same thing because we are in the same session. So I thought like that's pretty cool, like how we have a lot of physical stuff. So So as you can tell from like the picture, right, on the SZTU side, their mini project for this Design Energy Systems FACT program was actually to build a solar panel. And one interesting story is that one of the groups told us that they actually broke their solar panel after gluing one piece by one piece together. And then you might be thinking like, a solar panel must have cost so much of money. Like, if you think about it, like Singapore spent a lot of money in this solar panel kind of area, and like if they drop one, it's like how much will the school pay, right? But the amazing thing is there's insurance because we are in this program, right? So the school must pay for us. So because of that, like they had a second chance, and there's actually an interesting video. Like if you go and check out the Global SUTD Instagram highlights, one of the students in SZTU, he's called Billion Zhang, and he actually said, if you try 99 times, just round up the number to make it 100. So I like their spirit of resilience, where they really like try again and again, even though they failed for the first time. So for our side, the next slide. Yeah, so this is the SUTD students. We actually created a fly trap. And I wouldn't really say create, because we more of like remade the fly trap again. Like what we did was they actually like took apart like the fly trap and showed us what was like. And then slowly, like when we went to the FET lab in groups of 5, of course, like safe distancing, we actually made it together. And this fly trap, what we did was we placed it in the field for one day, like one whole day. And if I'm not wrong, it's like, yeah, then we counted like how many flies we have, how many ants we have. And the irony is like some groups actually only have ants, but they don't have flies. So instead of a fly trap, it's a mosquito like insect trap. Yeah, which is quite fun. So like overall, I really like enjoyed this FACT experience. And like I feel like even though it's online, like the friendships that we make is quite wholesome, I feel. And if like I have the chance to in person, after the COVID restrictions like die down, I would love to go over and like meet those friends in real life, and also like see how like it is like in their school, learning all these things which are so similar to us, like in terms of hands-on, but so different because like we are in different countries where we specialize in different things. Like for SUTD, we have our own FET lab, right? But for SZTU, because they're still a new university like us, they are very modern, but they have this solar panel making machine, which is so cool, which is why their project is about solar panels. So I thought like there's so many things to experience, and like yeah, FACT is basically amazing. So yeah, now Shin, how about you summarize?
Okay, let me summarize. All right, so this entire FACT experience has been an opportunity for us at a time of uncertainty. So even though because of COVID restrictions that you couldn't travel, right, we were still given social networking and learning opportunities with students from these partner universities. And we actually gained visual exposure and awareness of ASEAN and China. So be sure to look forward to virtual immersion programs and possible physical trips in 2022 by the Office of International Relations. Be sure to stay tuned to the SUTD Global Instagram page and scan this QR code to join the FACT channel for the FACT program channel by SUTD Global. Thank you so much, and now we'll open the floor for questions.
Yes, anyone with questions are requested to put their questions in the YouTube stream chat.
Neha, is there any questions on the site?
Yeah, the questions are coming right now because there is a slight delay between the YouTube stream and the call.
Okay, sure, no problem.
Okay, the first question is, can a non-freshie join FACT?
Okay, I'm so sorry about that question because this FACT is actually stands for Virtual Freshmore Asian Cross-Curricular Trips. So I believe if you are term 3 onwards, right, I don't think you get the opportunity to join the FACT program. But however, I believe there'll be other global opportunities for you, such as summer exchange programs. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is, I would like to ask, what do you think are the benefits of an online program?
Okay, maybe I can have a go at that question. Okay, honestly, I think it's quite an interesting experience because, like, okay, for me, myself, right, I've been on exchange trips before in primary school and polytechnic. But then now, I have been an exchange trip from my own home. So it's like, it's quite an interesting experience because even though I'm at my own home, right, in Singapore, I'm interacting with students overseas, where you are like kilometers apart, but then we are working on a project together every day for that FACT program. So I would say it's quite an interesting experience. Claudia, what about you?
Yeah, maybe I can add on also. So like Shin, I also went for like overseas exchange before in secondary school and like JC. But one thing is that of course like a virtual experience might not be as hands-on in terms of like meeting the person, going to the school itself, trying out their food there and like going to the different attractions in the country to see look. But I would say one thing, like the best part for me about like the virtual FACT program is that the friendships that you make is like still like it's still something that you can hold on to for a long time. And like for me, even though it has been a few like months already since the FACT program, right? But for my group, we still sometimes chat about things such as like the education system in China versus Singapore, and sometimes like the SACTU students will actually like tell us that like, oh, they receive our post letters and things like that. So it's like we still have the friendship, and that's the best part. And the second point is actually like because it is totally virtual, right? This whole experience, it is it's actually free, the experience. But if you compare to a physical session in terms of like the FACT program, like we actually go there with the aeroplane ticket, then there's lodging, and then there's like we have to pay much more now. So I would say like in terms of financial side, this is one of the main benefits of.
Okay, the next question. Thank you so much. The next question is, will this be physical in the future when COVID restrictions ease?
Maybe I can answer that. So actually during the FACT program, we feedback to the person in charge that like why don't we make this physical when the restrictions end, and like the teacher actually feedback and say definitely like there will be physical sessions, and if you're a non-freshie you can still join in terms of a facil. So you can sign up as a facilitator, and like if you get chosen to go with them, you can actually go physically. But this one is a bit hard to say when will they open up the borders, and like when will the restrictions die down in order for us to have this like physical experience. So it really depends on like the COVID pandemic, like whether or not like it will slowly become endemic, and in that endemic stage, then maybe we might have a chance to have a in-person exchange.
Waiting on more questions. Okay, the next question's here. Why FACT out of all the trips/programs?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
The question is, why FACT out of all the trips/programs?
Are you referring why FACT out of the other, I believe the other global programs by SUTD, is it? Well, okay, cause the reason is simple, because FACT is the only overseas opportunity we had last summer for us the term 3 students who just go into SUTD last year. So this is an opportunity cost, right? It's opportunity cost, this is the only chance for us to like get regional exposure as we are having our summer break. And it's a best chance for us to make good use of our time in the summer, to basically do some design thinking projects and get to know the students from other universities. Yeah.
Actually, I think there might be some in our emails which I saw, but I'm not very sure because I think I saw some like to other universities overseas, right, like UK, US. But those are paid, I think. And those are like more long-term, because FACT is just a 1 week program for most of the trips. It can range from 3 days to 2 weeks, but most of them are 1 week. So because it is shorter, right, it's easier to plan around your time. In terms of like if you want to hang out with your friends over the holiday, or like you want to do a part-time job, which is like quite flexible, or you even want to do an internship, which allows you for that 1 week of program, it will be much more practical to choose FACT, like compared to like other global trips. Like for example, those that they SUTD, when they send you emails through your my mail, then like those programs are more long term.
Actually, to add on, another reason is that we also get to apply the knowledge that we learned from our previous freshman courses in FACT also. So FACT is actually, like we said, presented earlier, right? FACT actually is built upon the courses that we took the previous term. So these courses are actually like some certain concepts are reintroduced in our FACT programs, and we discuss them with the students from these universities. So previously in our courses in the classes, like we may not understand fully the concepts and like the various demographics around these issues. Like for example, sustainability issues that we learn in SSW. So as we interacted with the professors and students in Brunei, right, we realized that there's actually a very strong contrast between Singapore and Brunei, because in Brunei, one interesting about them is that they actually preserve a lot of their natural forests as compared to Singapore, which is very urbanized. So this allows us to like understand like various, like how should I say this? Like it's interesting to learn about the how different they live their lives. For example, from my experience in the SSW program, right, SSW FACT program, is that the students actually live in very close proximity with nature, and sometimes they might get harassed by animals when they go outside also. So that's something very interesting to think about as a university student. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so that was our last question. Thank you so much for sharing your amazing experiences. Next up, Nicole will be sharing about her experience for the UC Berkeley summer session online. Nicole, I pass the time to you now.
All right, give me a moment. Oh, can you stop sharing screen? Thank you. Can you see my screen?
We can see a screen now.
All right. Okay. All right, I'll start now. So I'll be presenting about the UC Berkeley Summer Sessions Online 2021. So a bit about myself is I am Nicole, and I'm a EPD junior. So I'm currently in my term 6. So to move on, I'll share a bit about my experiences in my first class, which is my Spanish class. So one funny story, at least to me, was that I enrolled in the wrong Spanish class because I didn't know that there was a difference between elementary Spanish 1 and elementary Spanish 2. And I just thought that they had the same content, but they were happening at different timings. So I picked Spanish 2 because it was earlier. And on my first day of class, I was like 5 minutes late because I think I couldn't find the Zoom link. And when I entered, the class has already started and the teacher was speaking in Spanish. The slides were in Spanish and I was like panicking because half of me was thinking that this was elementary Spanish for someone who has never really spoken Spanish. But the other half of me was thinking that I was in the wrong class. So indeed, the latter half of me was right, and I was indeed in the wrong class. So because I signed up for Spanish that was actually Spanish level 2, and I was supposed to sign up for elementary Spanish 1, which was for level 1. Yeah, so I didn't attend the first class because I was like in the wrong class. Yeah. So in elementary Spanish 1, we learn a lot of things like how to introduce ourselves and describe about day-to-day events and actions that we like to do. And it's a lot of basic stuff. And I'll just start by introducing myself in Spanish. So, hola, me llamo Nico. Este verano tomo una clase de español y estoy muy feliz hablar de mi clase. So that I was introducing myself and I was saying that during the last summer, I took a class, Spanish class, and I'm very happy to share about my class. So learning a new language is definitely not easy as it seems because in addition to the language, you have to learn about its culture too. And I've always been interested in learning different languages to be able to communicate and connect with more people. And Spanish happened to be one of those languages that I was interested in learning. So I took this opportunity to learn elementary Spanish in this year's Berkeley Summer Sessions. So my online classes were conducted live every day from Monday to Friday. And for me, the classes were generally very fun and engaging because it's on Zoom and there's a lot of interaction between the students and the teacher. But on some days, it can be really tiring due to the fixed timing of the class. Like my class is 3 to 5 a.m. So because Berkeley US timing is 15 hours behind Singapore, so we have to accommodate to their class timings. And I managed to pull through these very early classes by changing my sleep schedule and sometimes even surviving the day with little sleep, especially when I have things in the day and the night.
So learning a new language in just 8 weeks is honestly very rushed and short in terms of the time we had to practice with each other. But I've definitely learned a lot more than I expected myself to. And of course, with a shorter period of time where classes were held, we had to do a lot more homework and self-practices on our own before and after class. And also, we also had oral presentations, essays, and quizzes, and also online assessments to do. It sounds a lot, but because the credits is quite high and it's a language itself, so it's quite intensive. But all this hard work truly paid off when we could apply these concepts that we had learned in class, and it was very satisfying. And naturally, different languages have their own set of rules, like grammar and sentence structure. So for Spanish, it was actually very hard for me at first because they had a lot of rules. They had like masculine and feminine words, different words conjugations for different pronouns, formal, informal forms, and also a lot of vocabulary, which were very hard to remember. Yeah, but any language, practicing really helps a lot. And together with active communication in class and also with the teacher and with your classmates. So no doubt that physical classes would have been better due to the ability to communicate with the teacher and other classmates, especially when you're learning a new language. You need to practice, always practice in class. But in a Zoom, most of the time, we are only talking to the teacher, and it's always a class student to teacher interaction. But we do have breakout rooms, but still there's always something lacking when we don't have physical class. Lastly, some of the not so fun stuff that was not shared in the LCC poster was that I had to buy a e-textbook that is around USD $19, and aside from that, I struggled to purchase the book because the website only accepted US addresses, and I'm in Singapore, so I don't have a US address. So I tried to buy the book via email. So I tried to email the website contact because like we have to have the textbook to be able to do the quizzes that was assigned to us. So I tried to contact them via the email, but they were very slow in replying, probably due to the time zone difference. And after week 2, the problem was still not solved. So I had to find another third because like all my assignments were piling up, and I don't want to delay them further. So what I did was I went to ask my friend who lived in the US before, and asked if I use her address to purchase the book, and it worked. So the problem was solved. But all in all, this summer class was really enjoyable, and I learned more about the Hispanic cultures too. And I'm very thankful for this wonderful experience of learning a new language. And I wish to further on learning this language in the future if I have the chance to. And of course, I made a lot of new friends too. Next, I'll be talking about my psychology class. So there's not much things to talk about this class because it's a lot of self-learning and e-learning based readings and videos. So I'll just briefly talk about this. So for me, general psychology was a very eye-opening class. So this class really touched on a lot of general concepts of psychology. For example, like drugs and effects, pro-social and anti-social behavior, personality theories, traits, motivation, and sleep and dreams. Like one thing about dreams is that I learned is that there's only a specific time in your sleep cycle that you can dream. The rest is just moving in. The rest is just sleeping. If I'm not wrong, if I can remember it correctly. But these topics that I just mentioned were the ones that I was more interested in out of all the topics, which was a lot of topics. And I would say that they covered a lot for this class. And as this class was e-learning based, it was very convenient to do the readings and watch the lectures on our own, especially when I had my Spanish classes, which was at 3 to 5 p.m. in the morning. So it was much more easier to juggle between these two classes. So the class was very interesting and detailed because the book showed a lot of research data, experiments, and even like mini experiments that we could do on our own in our room. And it was also nice that we had our 50 minutes exam, although 50 questions, but they were open for 24 hours to suit everyone's schedules. But however, I do find the readings a bit too overwhelming and the lectures a bit too monotonous. Readings-wise, they were really interesting, but I'm not someone that likes to read a lot. I prefer watching videos and lectures, but because the lectures were a bit monotonous and I would say that the slides were just like words. So I preferred to read the readings. It was much better. Thus, there was like this audio function that helps to read the text on the readings on the textbook. So I was really thankful for that. Yeah. And I would definitely felt better if there was live lessons. But I guess they have been having this e-learning idea or like setting even when this summer session is physical in the US. So I'm not sure how much they changed it, but I would definitely prefer a live lesson for this, so it would keep me more motivated to learn. But nevertheless, there were deadlines set to do mini quizzes after every chapter and topic that we read, and that gave me some kind of motivation to not procrastinate, because the mini quizzes, the results were actually recorded in our final result. And also, last but not least, similar to my Spanish class, we had to purchase an e-textbook that allowed us to access the quizzes that is included in our overall result. And another thing is that our midterms and finals, third midterm and finals were on the same day, so it was quite rushed. I'm not say rushed, but I did it back to back because I didn't want to delay during the exam. Yeah, I just want to enjoy my day. Yeah, but overall, my experience was really fruitful, although it was a lot more of my personal encounters. But I have learned a lot of thought-provoking concepts that I would love to share with others in the future. And I can see some of the concepts that were being taught to me in like my Haas class, for example. Yeah. So overall, these summer sessions have been really enjoyable, and I learned a lot of things in those 8 weeks. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Nicole, for sharing your experience. Like previously, if anyone has questions, they're requested to leave it in the YouTube stream chat. So we'll wait a few moments for the questions to come.
Okay. So I think there are 2 questions.
There's a slight lag between the Zoom call and the YouTube session, so it might take some time. Okay, your first question is here. How's your sleep schedule now, though? You must have been tough handling it during lesson time. Saw you had to take classes in wee hours. How did you manage to manage your sleep and time for the rest of the program?
I think definitely I have to change my sleep schedule. So what I did was, because my classes were 3 to 5 a.m. So what I do is I stay up all the way to 3, and then I'll go to sleep at 5. So my first meal of the day is always lunch, unless I have something in the morning. Yeah, so I just coped with this for 2 months. But after that, I managed to reset my sleep schedule. Yeah, so it was not very hard for me because I think this shift of sleep schedule was only for 2 months. So it was quite okay.
Okay, the next question is, what is your rationale for taking 2 husks instead of pillar mods for your summer session?
This is a very interesting question. So because I'm aware that SUTD HAS is quite limited, so they are only limited to like history, literature, or like social sciences, for example. So and I've always been very interested in learning new languages. So I took this opportunity to use language to clear my HAS. So at least it's something that I'm really interested in since I'm not very interested in like say social science. So it's a very good opportunity for me to kind of learn language. And also at the same time I had enough credits to clear another HAS. So I just took psychology.
Okay. Okay, that's all the questions for now. Thank you so much, Nicole, for sharing your experience. Okay, so last but not the least, we have the last team to share about their special project on Team Old is Gold, empowering the elderly in a digital world. But we will have that after a short break and at 4 p.m. Okay, welcome back everyone. So we have now the last team to share more about their special project on Team Old is Gold, empowering the elderly in a digital world. You can take it away now.
Thank you, Neha. Give me a moment to share my screen. All right,
Yep.
guys.
Yeah. So hi everyone. We are Team Old is Gold, and now we're going to share about our special project in Design Odyssey called ELTech, and our group is called Old is Gold. So maybe I can share more about what Design Odyssey is about first, and how our group came to where we are today. So Design Odyssey is actually a fifth role in SUTD, and what it is actually a social innovation kind of enterprise CCA, where we can come together with different groups of people to share and collaborate, and together we can form teams to come up with a project together. And this project can range from topics of sustainability to elderly to education to youth to arts. There are so many things that we can do as long as it makes a positive impact in society. There will always be people out there who believe the same way, and those people that you find who are like-minded, can form this team together and come up with a project from this drive program in Design Odyssey. So during the drive program, this is how me, Shin, and Darren, three of us here, we came to know of each other, and through that we didn't know each other before this, but through the Design Odyssey we started this project to help elderly members around us. Okay, so before I start, can I ask a question, even though this is a YouTube broadcast, but what does everyone do when you enter a building anywhere?
Use the Trace Together app.
Yes, so you take out safe entry on your phone, and you aim, fire, and you check in. So now the government knows where you are. Now imagine with me that you are super old and you've never used a phone before the age of 50. You don't know how anything works. And then now the government wants you to scan a QR code every time you go anywhere. Don't you feel that is very inconvenient? I mean, even though there is the tokens that are recently distributed. So imagine with me that you are using an app or web browser for the first time in your life, but because everything's in English and you don't understand the language, won't you feel like you are not a local in your own land? So dealing with this pandemic is hard, but for the elderly members of our community, things are even harder. So that's why our team came together and formed this group, Old is Gold, so that we can help the elderly in our community. So with that, we did an interview. And amongst our interview, we found phone navigation to be a common struggle for our interviewees. And Kit Moy, one of the elderly, was even worried of his phone blacking out when he pressed something wrongly. And I'm sure if you have elderly grandparents, they would have faced a similar struggle before. So what does this mean in the Singapore narrative? According to the Human Rights Watch, marginalized people are less likely to have internet access, thus they are less exposed to new technologies and modern ways of living. So this massive government surveillance program, Trace Together app, can be very challenging for them to grasp. They need help and they need guidance. So they need ELTech, our app. So therefore, this is how we came up with our vision, empowering the elderly to be digitally independent at their own convenience with an easy-to-use screen sharing app. And after further iteration, we actually came up with a new vision, which is envisioning a silver society where our grandparents can age gracefully in the technologically advanced world. So from our group's case study, Be My Eyes app, which was an app introduced to us by our mentor, Siu Yan, who was one of the mentors externally that Design Odyssey inquired through the Drive program, and that's how we got to receive assistance from her. And through this case study that we had, we found that there is a large community of people around the world willing and able to help marginalized groups such as the blind. People even compete to snatch the chance to be in the call, and the person with a better signal actually gets to pick up the call first. So it's no wonder that this app boasts a large volunteer base of 4 million volunteers, helping only 250,000 blind. So this success tells us that, hey, wouldn't it be amazing if we can provide a similar platform service since we have that confidence that there will always be a community out there who wants to help the marginalized groups such as the blind or the elderly. So adapting from the simple user interface, camera feature, and the tutorial function from the app, we have came up with the EltTech app with these 3 key features in mind. So Shin can talk more about the EltTech app.
Yeah, let me start by showing you a video, then you can pass the time to Darren to present the app features. Sorry. Give me a moment. Can I check that you guys can hear the sound?
Yeah, can hear Shin.
Okay, can.
哇，听说这个 app 可以叫我只要用手机啊，哇，我没有用过诶。我说什么？请求帮助 ，OK， 按一下。喂，哇，什么来了 ？Hello，
Uncle， 你在吗？
对。
哦，说你要去他的家啦。
啊，对。
OK， 没问题，那你就去地图。
地图啊，
啊，对，那个地图的 icon 哦，是在你的手机的下面右边。那我给你画一个圈圈。
哦，地图啊 ，OK， 啊，我按一下。
安哥，你要在这个搜查的地方上哦，写你的朋友的地址。
哦，地址啊 ，OK。
你去按一下，我帮你圈。
Sorry, can you pause the video?
OK。
Shin, the video
is
not shown.
Yep, sorry.
Yeah, I think you didn't stream the correct window. Cause we see
just a
slideshow.
Just a slide with the video embedded, but we don't actually see the video playing.
Sorry everyone, technical difficulties. This pandemic is hard. It is even harder for our grandparents. So it is also hard for us who are just starting to use Zoom share. So please pardon us and we shall show the video again. So Shin.
哇，听说这个 app 可以叫我只要用手机啊，哇，我没有用过诶。我说什么？请求帮助 ，OK， 按一下。喂，哇，什么来了 ？Hello，
Uncle， 你在吗？
对。
哦，说你要去他的家啦。
啊，对。
OK， 没问题，那你就去地图。
地图啊，
啊，对，那个地图的 icon 哦，是在你的手机的下面右边。那我给你画一个圈圈。
哦，地图啊 ，OK， 啊，我按一下。
安哥，你要在这个搜查的地方上哦，写你的朋友的地址。
哦，地址啊 ，OK。
你去按一下，我帮你圈。
哦 ，OK， 哦，我不懂怎样写我的地址，这样写啊。
没关系，我可以帮你写。所以你的朋友住在红马桥的哪里嘞？
哦，我朋友住红帽桥 Avenue 10啊，对。
安哥，现在我把你的朋友的地址写下去寄给你，你收到了吗？
啊，我看到。
OK， 现在我写一个圈圈哦，你就在圈圈上按一下。
OK， 那怎样嘞？
啊，对，那你
哦，我知道了，是我来粘那个 tag 在这边是吗？
对。
哦 OK，
你就按那个搜查的地方。
哦。
I hope you enjoyed the video just now. So I'll be going through some of the features that you may have seen in that short interaction. So the first feature that we have is the one-click call and search function. So basically, we have a very simple UI for the elderly, so that whenever they have problems using their smartphones, they can simply navigate to our app and press a single button to get help instantly. Now, this app doesn't just connect them to anyone. It connects the elderly with a volunteer that speaks their preferred spoken language. For example, if the elderly speaks Malay, the app will connect them with a volunteer that speaks Malay. If the elderly only speaks Hokkien, then the app will search for a volunteer that speaks Hokkien as well. And the moment the call connects, the elderly screen is shared to the volunteer, and now the elderly is able to communicate the issue clearly using both the voice call as well as showing on the screen itself. Thirdly, we have an annotation function which allows the volunteer to guide the elderly directly on their own screen.
We also have a text function that the elderly can use to send text to the elderly should they be unable to type or use the keyboard. Lastly, to protect the privacy of the elderly, we will be implementing a censorship function, such as using AI to actively check if the elderly's private info is being shared on the screen. Such private info could be their NRC, for example. I'll now be handing over to Shun to continue.
Thanks, Darren. With this idea, we went on to interview elderly, our elderly relatives and neighbors, and we actually received very good feedback on the idea. So we received a rating of 4 out of 5 for the ease of usage, 3.7 out of 5 for the usefulness, and 3.3 out of 5 for the encouragement of the app to encourage the elderly to use our phones more often. Some of the feedback that we received on the app is that it allows the app to allow the elderly to use their phones more independently, as they don't have to trouble their friends and family anymore. Also, one elderly commented that this is actually very good for the younger generation of adults and youths to teach the elderly to use their phones across different languages and dialects. Speaking of volunteers, we have interviewed volunteers also. These are the non-elderly aged 60 and below, and we found that 80% of them has been approached by elderly before for help on their smartphone navigation. We have received a decent rating for the app, which are 3.5 out of 5 for the interest in using the LTAC app, and 3.7 out of 5 for the motivation factor for them to teach elderly on their smartphones. So why now? Why are we creating a solution to help elderly integrate with technology? Well, it's because Singapore is an aging population, and to sustain the aging population, a lot of the workers have to stay longer in the workforce to sustain our economy. In fact, it has been announced recently that the statutory retirement age and re-employment age will be raised to 63 and 68 respectively next year in July. So there has to be a solution to allow these aged workers to adapt to technology as they stay longer in the workforce. And that's how the LTAC app will help them to stay productive in the workforce by adapting to technology. So let's talk about our competitors. Are there any other smartphone apps out there that understands the needs of the elderly and guides them accordingly to help them on their smartphone navigation needs? There hasn't. LTAC is a first smartphone mobile application designed to help elderly use their smartphones. While we do have competitors with the same objectives of integrating elderly and technology, none of them are as effective as this app. The Seniors Go Digital Program, SkillsFuture, and National Civil Academy are basically courses to teach elderly to use their smartphones and laptops. These courses may be convenient or provide personalized help. However, after seniors go through these courses, right, they might forget the things they have learned, and then end up that they forgot how to use our phones after that. So how LTAC solves this problem, right? It offers on-demand help, allowing volunteers to provide convenient, personalized help to teach these elderly on their smartphone navigation needs. So this is our team, which we started, like as Claudia said, started back in the Design Odyssey Drive bootcamp last year. And I'm Shin, I'm the UI UX lead. That's Darren, the lead developer. Claudia, our communication lead, and Richard, which is also a former member, our assistant developer. With the help of the previous Design Odyssey at school and our mentor Suyen, as you can see right here, we proceeded to do our speech at the final Design Odyssey Drive program. Out of the 16 that competed, we managed to clinch the Best Project Award and got very successful with the project. So what's next for us? So as we saw the success of the project, we went on to further develop it in the summer. We renamed the app to SOS, Silver Online Society, and gave it a fresh new user interface. So we also continued to develop a working prototype of the app, as you can see on the right. It's basically a screen sharing app. And after developing this app, we are looking to test it on real volunteers and elderly together so that we actually benefit the elderly on their smartphone navigation. Also, we are going to participate in the 15K challenge, which is the annual SUTD Entrepreneurship Hackathon next month in October. So we are all very excited with that, and we are definitely looking to have you guys who join us on our team too. Are you interested to be a volunteer beta tester? Or would you like to help us develop the SOS app? Do you have any experience or interest in UI UX design, app development, or you have none of these skills but simply have the passion in benefiting the elderly, the welfare and digital literacy of the elderly? Please feel free to scan our QR code here, and we will be sure to engage you guys to have us on our team, help us on this project. Just take note that no experience or skill set required, and we all learn as we progress together on this project. So with that, we have come to the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and be sure to follow us on our socials. We have a website that's beautifully done by Claudia, shows all the information about projects, and be sure to follow our Instagram page also, where we have updates on our project as well. All right, right now let us open the floor for questions.
Okay, thank you guys. Again, a reminder to send in your questions on the YouTube stream chat. We'll wait for the questions to come in.
While we are waiting for the questions, maybe I can share more about the role as a volunteer, like after you join the Telegram group chat. So, like, why do we need beta testers now is that we are almost like we are still in the phases of developing our app on Flutter, and right now we have like iterations through the summer, and we are almost done with our first beta prototype. So what we need is your help if you are really passionate in like helping your elderly grandparents, right? And how does this idea come about in first place is actually like the few of us over here, we all have elderly grandparents and even like the cleaners and uncles, aunties in our midst. And why did we even have this idea of creating a screen share app in first place, right? To allow elderly members to just have a one-click button to call people immediately, like, and get connected with someone in their same dialect group, right? It's because like I actually got to talk to one of the cleaners in the SUTD hostel site, like the SUTD hostel cleaners on my level, and she because I became friends with her, she told me that like she needed to change money for her son because her son is flying overseas and she doesn't know how to search on her Google search bar. So I helped her search on her Google search bar, and I took a screenshot for her so that she'll remember to show this to people on the way when she's trying to find her way. And I thought that this issue on how a lot of our seniors, right, they are in dialect group speaking, and I mean they are speaking dialects, but they don't really know how to read and write Chinese or English per se. So that's why they can't even use Google, because Google doesn't have dialect keyboards, you know. So that's why we thought of this idea to have a screen share app where people can just like immediately see from their phone screen when the elderly calls through the volunteer, right? And they can see how to navigate their phone, which will really give like elderly a lot of independence to navigate their phone with confidence, instead of like they need to keep asking their daughters, their sons, their grandchildren, you know, for help. Because I'm sure like a lot of elderly, they feel quite helpless in terms of this digital like sense. So it would really like help us if like you guys could like help out as a beta tester and help to test the app. Yeah. Okay, Neha, any questions?
Not yet. We're still waiting on questions.
Actually, if I may add on to Claudia's point earlier, right? What's actually very unique about this app is that it actually connects the elderly with the actual person to understand what their problem is. The thing about elderly is that as you were empathizing on their needs, right, we realized that a key factor in the solution of like helping elderly integrate technology, right, is that there needs to be a human element in place to help to understand the needs of the elderly. Like in a sense, we need an actual. It will always be good to have an actual person there to listen and understand to what the elderly wants, and from there and then from there craft the solution from there. So that's why it's very important for app to actually connect to actual volunteer, whereby the elderly can simply voice their concerns to the volunteer, and the volunteer can guide them accordingly. So one interesting about the app is actually it's not an app just to help the elderly use our phones. It's also an app to encourage volunteerism among the youths and adults in Singapore. By equipping you with many features like screen sharing and annotations, right, it makes it a lot easier for us like youths and adults to basically help the elderly on their smartphones. And don't be afraid of language barrier, because now you'll be connected to elderly that be sure will speak the same language as you. So yeah.
Okay, so we have our first question. How would you adapt your solutions for other problems if you have considered other problems?
Sorry, can you repeat?
How would you adapt your solutions for other problems if you have considered other problems?
Maybe I can start the ball rolling. So, in terms of other questions, may I ask a question back instead, like what specific problems of like the society you plan to like want our app to adapt to? Because like right now, the social issue that like we kind of like our group analyzed and found and we are passionate in is like we want to specifically help elderly, because we realized that there are very few apps catered to elderly in the society. One thing is because they are not digitally savvy, and the second thing is because they don't have like the financial like spending ability like compared to, let's say, people our age, you know, or people older than us, like working adults. So that's why, because there's a lack of profitability in that market, a lot of people don't like have the courage to venture into the elderly market to create an app for elderly. That's why our app, right, will be actually like non-profit. I mean, it will be like a non-profit app where we will sustain ourselves on volunteers, and also like we will partner with external communities like better.sg, where they will help us in terms of volunteers and connecting us to like the different parts of the project that we need. So that's why like that's the reason why, because our app is so specific for the elderly, right, our UI UX is all based on the perspective of an elderly. So which is why we cannot have this app for youngsters like us, where we prefer a more like stylistic, modern, trendy kind of like UI UX, because all the UI UX is based on what elderly needs and what elderly wants. So that's why it's so specific, the market. So our solution will not even consider adapting to like other age groups for now. But if we do find an opening in the future, for example, like after our first iteration of the app goes out into the app stores, and we realize that elderly do starts to like interact with different parts of the community, like other age groups, then we can consider at that point of time whether we need to adapt our app to those specific problems. So it's really about like our target audience, which is the elderly. That's why like in terms of adapting the app to other problems, it's still like something in the future. The rest, y'all have anything to add?
Okay, if I may add to Claudia's point, right? So the reason why we are actually very careful with the user interface design of the app is that we're actually dealing with a bit of a difficult group of people here, which is the elderly. So as you know, as people age older, like we gain a lot of like different kind of like difficulties and challenges. So we must make sure that this app is very easy to use by the elderly, and make sure that it actually understands their needs very well, which is what Claudia said. But if you're looking into like targeting different other problems, right? So actually, if you think about this app, it's a simple screen sharing app that allows another person to basically annotate on your own phone and guide you what to do. So you can actually think of this as a more advanced version of IT help desk, whereby as a consumer like me, I need help on a certain software on my computer, and then I need help on how to navigate that software, and I can't Google a solution myself. So possibly, I can maybe perhaps do something similar, call a help desk support person on the other end, on the company's end, and maybe there can be a person that see my screen and annotate me on what I can do to navigate through the software that I need help from. So that is it's a bit far-fetched, but that's a possible result that this project can go through. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Are there any other questions, Neha?
So far, not yet. We'll wait for a bit.
Okay.
Okay. Next question. Where/how do you see this app progressing or growing in 5 years' time? Would you need more customer service staff when more and more elderly join the app for help?
All right, that's a very good question actually. Let me answer that question. All right, so we have thought about it. Okay, the thing about Singapore is we are a developed country, and then so the thing is, in time to come, right, there won't be elderly in Singapore that need help with tech assistance more, because as our generation matures, right, we get more like, how should I say, as we develop further as a smart nation, in time to come, which is the generation of our parents, like my parents' generation, right, to eventually be the next super generation basically, and in time to come, they won't need help with their smartphones anymore. The thing is, we are in the next 5 to 10 years, right? We are not looking just in the elderly population in Singapore, but also in the elderly in other countries that are developing currently. These countries are basically like Indonesia, Malaysia, Taiwan, and China. Basically, countries worldwide where eventually, as they develop further, right, and they face a solution where they have a generation of people that are not able to adapt with this fast change of technology. So where this problem is in place, right, there has to be a solution that allows them to better adapt to technology. And that's where this app will come into place, whereby these people can simply seek help from their community and get help from them for their smartphone navigation needs. Darren or Claudia, do you have anything to add on to that?
Maybe I can add on a little bit. So yeah, like what Shin say, because as we get older, right? Our parents get older, and the next generation of elderly in Singapore, right, will be more technologically savvy in a sense where even if they don't know how to like traverse, let's say, social media websites, they would still be able to use their phones to make calls, to search Google at least, because they would know English and Chinese due to the bilingual policy in Singapore, like that was enacted a few years ago. So like that's why in terms of like adapting our app for future generation, and this can be even linked to the first question on how like our app can be adapted to different problems in society, right? So because like next time when our own generation become the elderly, new problems will enact. Like maybe we may not be digitally like we may not have so much issues in terms of like digital aspects, but we may have other issues that we might not know now yet, right? Because we are not old yet, actually. So like when the time comes, then like I believe that our app can conform to that new generation of elderly, because our app would still have the motto that we want to be an app in the hands of every single elderly in Singapore, which means even though like the years pass and our app gets older, we still want to adapt to be able to support like the new batch of elderly that is incoming. Yeah. So if you are interested to see where we progress, you can always find out more by being a beta tester and joining our volunteer base, especially if you know like dialects like Hokkien, Teochew, Hakka, is very, very helpful. Darren, you got anything to add?
Thanks, Joseph, you for the question. So regarding the second question you asked about customer service staff, I think what we fail to bring about is that our app is like a social community app. It brings people within the community to help each other. So when there are more elderly joining the app, we might also have more volunteers as well. So actually, I don't think there'll be any shortage of people that want to help the elderly. Yeah.
Yeah, so in essence, basically, this is not, you can think of SOS also as a kind of social media app, basically, why do I say social media app? Because we want it to be a community, where you have elderly calling and volunteers calling each other, and basically improving the lives of the elderly as they adapt to technology and learn to use our smartphones. So eventually, right, one of our future plans is that we want to create this as a platform whereby volunteers and elderly can share their stories after they help one another within the app itself. So within the app, they can share their stories about how maybe an elderly can learn to get directions for a volunteer, or how a volunteer was managed to help an elderly. So, and then they can basically publish these stories on their own social media pages, Instagram, Facebook, and whatnot. So this whole idea is to create a more inclusive society in technology in Singapore, whereby it, in a sense, it's a kindness movement, basically, to encourage kindness among Singaporeans, specifically between youths and elderly. And so this is also a part to play in bridging the gap between the younger and older generations of people in Singapore. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why we have the word society in our name also, SOS.
Silver Online Society.
Yeah, but actually, SOS is also like, the song like da 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 da, the SOS. It's actually it's actually like a cry for help, in Mamma Mia. So it's like when people think of SOS, it's like, okay, the elderly will be like, SOS, I need help, like SOS. They will click the button and immediately they will get through in a call with one click. So that's how we came up with SOS, Senior Online Society. Yeah. Yeah, you can always join our Telegram chat to find out more, and you can always ask us if you have any questions also, if you are shy to ask on the YouTube broadcast. So Neha, any more questions?
No, that's all for today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Team Old is Gold. Okay, yeah. So with that, we have concluded our LCC 2021 Day 1. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you on Gather.town and on the streams on Day 2 as well. Thank you all of you for joining us on our LCC virtual segment.